Ebony, and I lost my husband to homicide 3 years ago. Well, it'll be 3 years in June. And I was with him. Um, I watched him die, and we had two small children, 3 and 5 months at the time. So it was like our first date night since I had the baby, because he was a preemie, so he's in the hospital. He just got out of the hospital like 2 months before that. And it was just very tragic. I was in shock for like 3 months. And without the help of survivor-led organizations, I don't know how long it would have took before I could see reality again, or begin to start a healing process. So it was through organization, the Peace Institute, actually, how I met Ruthie, and We Are Better Together. And I mean, the Peace Institute was integral, and I feel like leaving the hospital, there was nothing leaving the hospital. You know, how police deal with you in the hospital when your homicide is going on. It's very traumatizing. You're not seen as a victim for 1 minute. I mean, I didn't feel like a victim in the hospital, leaving the hospital, and to this moment, by the system at all, because my husband had a criminal history. And it didn't matter that for 4 years before his life was taken, that he wore a suit every day, and he did he was an agent for change in the community. You know, he did a lot of core reform work and working with at-risk youth to try to help to interrupt the cycles of violence that he went through. But nobody seen that when he was murdered at all. All they seen was his history. And even when they seen me, you know, I wasn't treated like by the people in the hospital, like they just let me to sit there in shock and be dealt with by the police very aggressively. And I still haven't heard anything. The murder is unsolved, you know? And that's a big problem. Yeah, so I found that at the Peace Institute, it was the beginning to understand how trauma affects the brain, and it was a beginning part to my journey to understand what I was going through was a part of grief. And I think that was one of the biggest things for me, to be able to understand that I wasn't crazy, that what was all these feelings of 1 minute being here, 1 minute being there, sad, you know, no happiness for months. But, you know, just the understanding of what that type of trauma does to the brain, and how our body and our mind react to just being in a traumatic situation. Understanding what it did to the brain, because I did 1 day of talk therapy, and that kind of helped me a lot to just understand, like, okay, I'm not crazy. I can find some healing somewhere. Now I just got to figure out what works for me. What worked for me was a more holistic approach, because I have been a massage therapist since 2011, and I had found this workshop called Mastering Energy Awareness for Self-Healing, which ended up being like a guided crystal bowl mindfulness experience, which for me started to help me to release some of the traumas energetically, and also tap into other traumas, which led me to understand, and it just like opened my mind to why people are so angry in the world, and why people are killing each other senselessly, you know, for no reason, out of fear or whatever people's thing is. Most of it comes from unresolved traumas. And like she was saying, Ruthie was saying, like you have to go back to move forward. And that pretty much started a whole healing process of like trying to get back to, you know, where the beginning problem started. And it, like Steph was saying, it's our youth, you know, they're experiencing so much traumas right now from the home. Like myself, I was traumatized from home. A cycle of violence was started in the home. It was already, and it was historical. It had been going on for years, right? I mean, violence begets violence, right? And when somebody gets murdered, all you have is anger. So you want to see some type of justice And we're only taught a certain kind of justice. You know, we don't just see justice as the system is gonna be justice. Somebody sitting in jail is gonna be justice. How is that, you know, equal to a life being gone? You know? I see it a little bit differently now because I see that even the offenders, they need compassion because they're angry for something. You know, they have trauma from somewhere. That's why they, you know, so like she said, you know, both sides need help because that's, you know, that's basically how it's a historical wheel, cycles of violence. And, you know, so I now do mindfulness and sound healing for the youth. And also for trauma survivors. That's how I met Ruthie. We actually met at a hearing to amend the victims' compensation law in our state because...
Which we passed.
Yes, which passed because they had a law. The law was basically like, and a lot of us who are survivors of homicide victims, we can't even get the money to bury our loved ones because of they're using their history. They're still being judged in death. And that's a fund that is created by criminals. It's all criminal money. It's not a tax dollar goes into it. You know what I mean? But then as soon as a criminal dies, then you're denied for being a criminal, which is unheard of. But we helped to pass that even though they still got a long way to go. But it was one of the most empowering experiences to be a part of changing a law that, you know, actually helps the families, because it's the families who are left. A person's already gone. And why is the system still judging somebody who's dead? Right. Which is, and that is just re-traumatizing, you know, to have to continue. 3 years later, you know, I'm still explaining to people who my husband was before he died, not who he was all the years before he died. You know, at what point do we stop judging the dead? At what point does a survivor have to stop repeating this part of the story to be understood or have some compassion? Because the way people look at you is like, you're judged from the minute. Oh, he got shot. What did he do? Right. That's what I want to know. What did he do to get shot? What did you do? You must have seen it. Oh, you didn't see anything? There's a lie in there somewhere. And then so you're automatically victimized. You're victimizing the victim. You know, over and over. And it's like, it's a continual process of trying to heal that, because anytime I even say that I'm a survivor to somebody, it's like, well, what happened? Why did he die? And that's like a natural reaction from a person, you know, and you're like, oh, how do you even answer that question? Is there an answer to that question? How do you know if it's an unsolved homicide? But people are so quick to just say why. And I get it, it's a natural question, right? But where does that bring a survivor to?
Right.
You know? So it's just living trauma all over again. So, you know, I believe in a holistic approach, talk therapy. I believe that survivor-led organizations are some of the best because survivors understand from going through the process, you know, what you need. You need somebody to be non-judgmental. That's one of the biggest things, you know? We don't understand why people are so judgmental. Or sometimes, you know, you just need somebody to just listen, you know? It's not even that you have to understand. Maybe have a little less awkward look on your face. You know, that might be helpful as well. But, yeah, so, you know, how I turn my pain into purpose is by bringing holistic stress relief techniques and self-care techniques to trauma survivors and the youth. So I work with the youth doing detentions and helping them to tap into their anger and address the anger. Because the anger is real and it's valid, and we're all entitled to our feelings, you know. It's just a matter of how we're reacting, what we're doing with that anger. So it can be used motivationally to make change or create chaos. So I advocate for the other part of it.
Yes, please.
Stephanie, y'all want to
So,